Before we draw this to a close, I'd like to talk for a few questions, if we may, about the crisis in Gaza that you just mentioned. The situation in Rafah is worsening. More than 1 million people, displaced people there now. The shelling has started, the bombardment has started. How conscious should we be in the West of the decision that came out of The Hague, that there is the potential for a genocide being caused in Gaza at this moment in time? And do you think that Israel's current actions, specifically what's happening in Rafah right now, constitute, well, I mean, you did just use the phrase, but I'd like you to expand on it, a genocide?
The genocide started in 1948. It's simply becoming more lethal, more bloodthirsty, less bearable than it ever was. The complicity of the West is mind-numbing and indisputable. Here you have an apartheid state. It is clearly an apartheid state. Anybody who's been to the West Bank knows it's an apartheid state. They've built walls and they've built roads exclusively for the use of the illegal settlers that the local population cannot use. That's apartheid. So you have an apartheid state which has always tried to merge the Zionist ideology, the Zionist narrative, with the facts on the ground. The Zionist narrative from the 1910s was a land without a people for a people without a land. In other words, terra nullius is what the British did in Australia. They said, Captain Cook arrives and declares that Australia to be empty of people. So the Aborigines are not people, so kill them. Right? Genocide. It's the first step. Terra nullius is the first step towards genocide. So that's the Zionist project. A land without a people for a people without a land. Now, of course, there were people there. There were millions of people there.
There were.
So now the IDF is in the process of ensuring that the Zionist allegory, slogan, becomes a fact on the ground. They're getting rid of them. The whole point is to expel them, to kill them, to drive them away. They do not want to kill them all. I mean, they want to kill as many as is necessary to convince the rest to leave. You can see that in the West Bank, because people say to me, but Yanis, how can you possibly support Hamas? I'm not supporting Hamas. Netanyahu supported Hamas. Likud and Netanyahu were in the business of diminishing the authority of the PLO, and they have been for decades supporting Hamas, financially, politically, militarily, until they completely destroyed the capacity of the PLO, of the Palestinian Authority, to appeal to the Palestinian people, and only Hamas is left to represent them. And in any case, let's say that we press a button and Hamas disappear. They just disappear. They're all convinced. They're brainwashed by some wonderful piece of artificial intelligence delivered by drones, to give up, to surrender. What happens in the West Bank? Hamas are not there. The ethnic cleansing, the genocide is continuing there. And of course, you can see that they just want the land, not to mention the natural gas deposits, which are off Gaza. So this is what's happening. The West, especially those who claim to care about human rights, we must accept that we have now proven beyond dispute that we never cared, as countries, as polities, as establishments, as media, about human rights. We only cared about our human rights and the human rights of our friends, of our bastards, right? If you are not one of us, you don't have human rights. You can be bombed, you're never killed. Even if we kill you, you die. Whenever they say, hang on, what's happening? They are terrorists, right? So, never before has the West's image around the world been so terrible. What is happening is, at once, in the West, opinion, public opinion, conventional wisdom is solidifying its support for Israel's genocide, but the rest of the world is becoming more and more disillusioned with the so-called principles or ethical dimension of the Western polity, of the Western way of thinking.
You mentioned drones there, and I would like to, if we have time, to cover the intersection of sort of techno-feudalism and this conflict. But can we just hone in for a second on the sort of the shifting of Israel's stated war aims? Because initially we were told it's the destruction of Hamas, right? Which poses its own questions, because does that mean the military infrastructure? Does that mean the nurses that are employed in the Hamas-run health ministry, for example? But that was the initial stated aim. And gradually the rhetoric has changed to security control in Gaza. The rhetoric is shifting. And I wonder, first of all, what you believe the actual war aim is for Israel. And secondly, whether you think that aim is achievable.
The original war aim has always been to take over the land from the river to the sea as part of a greater Israel, to expel half of the Palestinians and to keep the other half as bonded slaves. That was it. The original apartheid idea of the white supremacists, the Boers in South Africa. That's why we call it an apartheid state. That was always the case. Up until the 7th of October, that plan was working magnificently, because you and I were not even discussing Palestine, at least not to the extent that we are. Especially public opinion worldwide had accepted that it was over, that Israel had won, that the Palestinians in Gaza were fading. 60% of children before the 7th of October were malnourished. So the embargo was effectively killing them softly, slowly. And it was just a matter of time before, the people living there would want to get out. And the land would be cleared, and it would be settlers and so on. While in the West Bank, you had something like 200,000 settlers 10, 15 years ago. Now you have 800, 900,000. So they keep settling. They go straight from Boston or Brooklyn, or they go straight to a house of a Palestinian that has been thrown out of his home illegally in occupied land. So that was the aim. On the 7th of October, Hamas's actions shook the military establishment, the intelligence establishment in Israel, because they realized that they had not contained them to the extent that they had hoped they would. But that was a magnificent opportunity for them, essentially to kill lots of Palestinians, and to use that setback in their intelligence community as an opportunity for speeding up the process of genocide. That's what it is. And as far as Netanyahu is concerned, his war aim is that the war doesn't end. An endless war, because he knows that the moment it ends, he loses the prime ministership. And you have Biden, Scholz, Macron, Rishi Sunak supporting this war criminal. Therefore, they are war criminals themselves.
I'm glad you mentioned the international leaders in connection to this, because I wanted to get your thoughts on how realistic international pressure is in possibly bringing about an end to this conflict. Whether that's...
I don't see the international pressure. Where is it?
Well, that's what I'm going to ask you.
Where is it? Mr. Borrell, the ridiculous supposed foreign minister of the European Union, the High Commissioner for Foreign Affairs, gave a speech for the first time which was critical of Israel. And he said that they've gone too far. They've gone too far in Gaza, right? And how can they kill these people? They are sending them the weapons, the bombs that are being dropped on Rafah as we speak. How dare he? How dare you, Mr. Borrell, ask such a question? You are arming the hands that are killing the Palestinians, and you have the audacity to question why is it that they are continuing to do it. You're giving them every reason to be doing it. President Biden came the other day out and said something similar, that they've overdone it. If he orders today that the American army ceases to support through the satellite system, through delivery of armaments, spare parts for their planes, and of course these gigantic bombs that are being delivered daily to Israel by the American military, the war will end tomorrow.
So if it was applied, international pressure could bring about an end to this conflict?
Yesterday, would have ended. We are, in the West, responsible for the maiming and the killing of the children of Gaza today. We are responsible.